Somme and Aisne rivers. 49 French divisions manned this front's 225 miles, with 17 more left in the Maginot Line. There were also 4 British divisions. 2 of these had been isolated from Gort's main force and thus missed the Dunkirk evacuation, while the other 2 were newly arrived from England. The French forces included 6 much depleted mechanized and armored divisions, and the British also had 1 weakened armored division. The French were opposed by 130 German infantry divisions, including the fresh 2nd and 9th Armies. The panzers were regrouped into 5 armored corps, each containing 2 panzer divisions and 1 of motorized infantry. 3 of these corps were given to Army Group B in the west, 1 being commanded by Rommel and the other 2 by Kleist. The 2 remaining panzer corps, under Guderian, went to Army Group A in the east. To bolster his weak forces, Weygand ordered the construction of a checkerboard of closed operational bases called hedgehogs. These were installed in woods and villages and packed with artillery used in an anti-tank role. Even if outflanked, the hedgehogs were designed to be able to continue resisting. The German offensive opened in the west on June the 5th. The French put up a determined resistance, and the Germans had difficulty in subduing the hedgehogs. At last, on the 7th, Rommel's panzers broke through towards Rouen. French resistance in this sector promptly collapsed. Rommel had dealt with the hedgehogs by bypassing them completely and leaving them for the infantry to mop up. Army Group A's offensive began on June the 9th and also ran into stiff resistance. But that night, Guderian got his tanks across the Aisne. The next day, he widened his bridgehead, and with the remaining panzer divisions following through, the French defense gave way. Weygand's armies began to disintegrate on all fronts, and on June the 10th, Reynaud and his government left Paris. 4 days later, the Germans entered the city. On June the 16th, Reynaud resigned and a new cabinet was formed, headed by Marshal Philippe Pétain. 84 years old, Pétain had been one of the heroes of France's victory in World War I. In the present crisis, however, Pétain could see no point in prolonging the struggle. A request for an armistice was transmitted to Hitler. The following day, June the 17th, Pétain made a national broadcast instructing the French to stop fighting. By June the 19th, Rommel occupied Cherbourg, which marked the end of his campaign. In 6 weeks, his 7th Panzer, nicknamed the Phantom Division for its apparent ability to appear out of nowhere, had captured nearly 100,000 prisoners, as well as hundreds of guns and armored vehicles. His own casualties came to just over 2,500, of which fewer than 700 were killed. Only 42 of his tanks had been destroyed. In the east, Guderian's remorseless panzer drive quickly cut off all the French troops in the Maginot Line before pushing on to the Swiss border. To his right, Kleist's panzer corps crossed the Loire and penetrated as far as Lyon. On June the 20th, Hitler delivered his terms to the French envoys. Hitler's main objective was to cut France off from Britain. The northern part of France would be occupied by Germany, and used as a base for continuing the war with Britain. The remainder would be governed from Vichy by a regime headed by Pétain. The French could keep their fleet and their colonies. Hitler had a humiliating surprise in store for the French. He had located the railway carriage in which the German commanders surrendered to the French at the end of the Great War. German engineers were ordered to hack down the walls of the museum in which the carriage was housed and bring it to the exact place it had stood on that famous occasion. There, in the forest of Rotonde, 50 miles northeast of Paris, Hitler awaited the French delegation on June the 21st. When the French, led by General Hunziker, arrived and recognized the carriage, they were aghast. It was Hitler's supreme gesture of revenge. One German diarist later wrote, "The Battle of France is over. It has lasted 26 years." On June the 22nd, General Weygand authorized the acceptance of German terms, and the three French armies, cut off in the east, a total of 400,000 men, surrendered. At 12:35 a.m. on June the 25th, the fighting officially ceased. Though Germany had not asked for the handing over of the French fleet, Britain still feared its ships falling into German hands. On the 3rd of July, the Royal Navy attacked the main French squadrons, putting many ships out of action. This raid caused great bitterness and badly soured Anglo-French relations. The German conquest of the West had cost them just over 150,000 casualties, of whom only 27,000 were killed. Total Allied losses in killed and wounded came to 390,000, while 2 million more were taken prisoner. The Luftwaffe lost 1,284 planes and the RAF 931, more than half of which were precious fighters. The French Air Force had some 560 planes destroyed. The Germans also captured huge amounts of Allied equipment of all kinds. Germany's crushing victory confirmed its position as the supreme power in Western Europe. Their only remaining enemy, Britain, was isolated and much weakened. Hitler was convinced she would soon throw in the towel. Even before the armistice came into effect, he had ordered the demobilization of 35 divisions, and the panzer groups were to be broken up. As far as Hitler was concerned, the war in the West was effectively over. Buoyed by his great triumph, Hitler was already starting to contemplate a campaign against the Soviet Union. Yet by letting the British Expeditionary Force slip through his fingers at Dunkirk, Hitler ensured that Britain could continue fighting. He was therefore about to lead Germany into a war on two fronts. His most spectacular victory thus sowed the seeds of his ultimate defeat.